For folks listening on audio, you're likely to hear a couple similar sounding accents. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see his handsome mug, and he is Doug Wood, and he's joining us from South Africa. Arguably, I would say, certainly in my opinion, South Africa's foremost golf instructor right now. Doug, how's it, mate? Welcome to the show.
Hey Mark, how's it, man? Thanks for having me on. It's pretty cool to be chatting to you over this telecast and not having to just chat to you on the putting green when we're running past each other at a golf event.
Yeah, that's standard procedure for the folks who haven't seen us. I'm on my
Yeah.
way somewhere, or if I'm covering one of these PGA Tour guys, I'm leaning over the shoulder going, so what are you working on now? I need insights. Yeah, that's how it works. Okay, Doug, before we get into the topic, and I love the topic, it's turning, you know, understanding thoughts, ideas into fields that work under pressure, because that's what golf's all about, right? But before we go there, for our global audience who might not know who you are, tell us about Doug Wood, former golfer, full-time professional, now changing lives on the world's tours. Tell us about you.
Yeah, so same sad story as a lot of professionals before me. Tried really hard to get good at the game. Played on tour for about 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Hit balls till my hands bled. Couldn't understand why I wasn't making it.
Yeah.
The normal. And kind of when nobody else could help me, I kind of got to a point where I thought, well, hold on, let me go and investigate and actually do some studies. And this was probably back in the 90s. And just never stopped studying anything and everything to do with the human body, person, golf, anything you can possibly think of. I just continuously absorb it.
Yeah, and I want to read this back to you and get your take. You say, I believe I can grow and promote golf, and I have all the relevant bodies working towards a common goal from our holistic world-class facilities. And then you also, I've read some of your quotes, and you're like, my goal is to answer the questions that I never got answered when I was playing. And everyone who's watching this, listening to this, they've got those, and they go to their PGA pro or their coach or whoever it is, their buddies, even in the grill room after the round, the bar. And we've got these things that sort of, I wouldn't say maybe keep us awake at night unless you're playing at a high elite level. But we're all sort of wondering that why. And everyone, all the great teachers to me are inspired by that question and finding a way to communicate with golfers and help them to understand who they are, why they do what they do, kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. If you have a bad belief system, or if you have picked up, let's call it a tip from your mate at the bar, and he said, "Well, listen, you really need to
look. We're not advocating for that stuff, folks.
No, we're not.
No,
But it could be your friend at the driving range, or it could be just a really good golfer, or you may have picked up a style. For instance, you may believe that you have to only swing off your left leg, or you may believe that you have to swing off your right leg and then your left leg when you're transferring weight. If those belief systems are not in place or they're incorrect for your body, you are certainly setting yourself up for a long and hard journey in golf. You definitely want to be matching your beliefs to what you need as a person. Because if you believe something and it's not true to your body or your style, you're most certainly in for quite an interesting journey, as I was.
Okay. That being said, I want to start there with a personal anecdote, both as a player and then a teacher, now a recovering instructor who's turned to a microphone because it doesn't talk back as much as what the golfers do. Okay. Young golfer, I grew up playing sort of high school golf, got good, played for Western Province, then ran into guys like Goose and Ernie else, that is, in this sort of crowd. And, Ernie is one of those sorts of golfers where even as a junior, you watched him play and you were like, holy smoke, I'm not good enough. And then to a large extent as a teacher, because of his influence and how good he hit it and swung it and stuff, I became that instructor, mea culpa here, right? Where we were at the start of the Sony Handycam era.
Yeah.
I have footage of else because he let me have it. And then I'd basically go, well, there you are, Doug, and there Ernie is, and this is what you look like, and that's what you should look like. And looking back, I cringe. But so many golfers still do that because of YouTube and stuff. They download Tiger's swing, and then they try to do that sort of thing. So does this fit to your belief system, Quip?
Yeah, yeah, completely. So I did the same thing as you when I started out teaching. It was like, well, it's supposed to look like that. And it was a bad question for myself as a teacher because it's not about what it's supposed to look like. It's about what does your field do to produce the club face back to the golf ball? Those are the good questions.
Yeah.
So if your question is, well, I have to look a certain way, and I'm going to drive towards that, and you're not looking at a functional question of what does it feel like to deliver a club face to a golf ball consistently doing X, you're certainly going to be in trouble. And I've still got even kids in our academy now, they still come to me and they say, geez, we downloaded this stuff off YouTube and you can't believe it. And this girl, she was showing us how she pushed into the ground with her left foot and her left toes were curling into the ground. And I'm going like, guys, you don't even know if this is what you need to be doing. And here you are busy trying to hit balls like this on the driving range. It's just insane, yeah.
Okay, I've got to look at the shadow side of this because kind of this is the old golf teacher in me, right? Because
yeah,
it's easy to do that. It's easy to find a swing and go. Because you use on the PGA Tour, we see it week in and week out, where you've got these wandering eyeballs. No matter what's going on and who's playing well, they're wondering what those guys are up to, and you see it on the LPGA as well. I'm certain. So, with that being said, the shadow side of it is convincing the young learner from that works with you, or convincing the young student in one of your academies to go, hey, I recognize you, I'm hearing you, but now this is how we're going to deal with this. And I feel like if you talk about dealing or putting aside those inclinations, how you can help all the folks watching and listening to this get on the right track.
Yeah, I think again, it starts with a couple of really good questions.
Okay.
So question number one, you may believe something. Is it the right belief? So the first thing you've got to do is question your belief.
All right.
Question number two, is it limiting me or is it pushing me forward? Because if you've
That's
hit
a hard question to answer, isn't it?
If you've hit 20,000 balls and you're no better, you may be better at the move, but you're no better as a golfer. You need to ask yourself a question: is this what I'm supposed to be doing to be getting better? And then don't fall into the trap of having, well, I have to do this in a method, because there's no have to in golf. You can combine multiple movements and multiple fields and come out with a great answer. And there's a lot of good guys out there showing us that week in and week out.
Yeah.
Give you an example. Ash, obviously, done great in the last couple of weeks.
This is Ashley, just for the folks who, Ash is our term of endearment for Ashley Boo. Hi, Ashley Simon from, my day back in the day, just recently won the AIG Women's British Open. You're a coach.
So if we had stopped Ash she's got quite a big disconnect in her backswing early on. So disconnect, just for the viewers and for the listeners, would be where the arms kind of get away from your body. And that's kind of, she actually pushes the handle of the club quite far away from her body. And the takeaway, and I mean, just about every golf instruction manual will tell you,
low and wide,
don't do
slow.
that.
Yeah.
And her makeup in her body allows her to reconnect at the top of the swing and have this beautiful swing plane and these beautiful positions that she can manage. If we had taken that away from her 12 years ago, I don't believe that she would be able to hit the golf ball the way she does right now. Mm-hmm. Her makeup, we have made her idiosyncrasy what is considered to be a bad thing in golf, something that's an absolute strength, because she does it every single time with a wonderful club face onto the back of the golf ball. So
okay, that brings up a fantastic question as we delve into this, like, feels that work for me under pressure. And you use the term idiosyncrasy, and oftentimes when I'm on shows, I call a move idiosyncratic.
Yes,
but oftentimes those moves don't look so great. It's kind of like when I look in the mirror, I'm like, no, really. And folks do that. Everyone's got a phone now, and they can video their own swings, and they see stuff. They're like, hey, that is just not looking so hot. How do you advise them to say, look, in the overall system, this thing has its place? Because I feel like that's where the real understanding helps people to stay the course with what they do consistently well.
I think look from the inside out and not from the outside in. So look from from the club face, and then look on the way out as the circle gets bigger, and then what's influencing that. If you can do that, look at things like your balance. Always work from the inside out, and that's obviously after having your setups and stuff like that in certain positions for your body type. But always look from the small stuff on the inside and how is that moving, and then what's affecting those movements. A lot of the golfers, when they look at it, they look at this big overall picture and these big moving parts,
Yeah.
let's say the outer circle. And if they're looking at that outer circle, it kind of makes it aesthetically beautiful or aesthetically bad. And yeah, that may have no functional effect on the actual golf swing.
Yeah.
Some stuff they're doing, yeah.
Okay.
So I would say look to really close first instead of looking at all the big stuff on the outside.
For the folks watching this on YouTube, I'm scribbling feverishly, okay, as I'm trying to keep up with Doug. Along those lines there too, I want you to help the learner listening to this going, okay, I'm on board, but now I'm going to go and have a lesson with my club pro this afternoon. And this guy or lady is adamant to get me to adjust this, yet somehow I believe deep down in my soul that this is who I am. Help them communicate with the teacher, mentor, whoever it is, to say, this is me. This is what I feel like I can do, because a lot of folks are kind of gun shy with the communication with a coach, unless they're working with you, of course.
Well, yeah, I think with my students, I try and structure it really simple. So I give them a little business plan, or I give everybody the freedom to express a business plan to me.
All right.
So we'll discuss it in terms of pillars, in terms of building a house. So I'll say to them, okay, cool, you're going to have 3 technical pillars. I'm just using this as an example for the rest of your life. Those technical pillars may involve, width on the backswing. It may involve, stability in the legs on the downswing, and it may involve a bit of rotation. I'm just using that as an example.
Okay.
That would stay constant if we built your swing around those 3 things. Let's say width, stability, and rotation. If we did that, then we'd say, okay, well, do we have a club face that fits into that? Okay, cool. So now you've done your technical pillars. Then you'd say to the student, well, what can you feel when you do this? Do you have the ability to feel the club on the inside or the outside? Do you have the ability to drop your hands down low or high? What is it producing? Because now you're saying, okay, well, I can actually produce a skill set that's built on top of these technical pillars, let's say in those 3. So then you say, okay, well, I have these available. When I do those feelings, Doug, I am able to hit a high draw every time. Okay, wonderful. So low fade is not really available to you if you have these if you have those technical pillars in place. Then you go and you say, okay, cool, well, you've got the feeling that you can do these things and the ball does this every time. Can you aim at a point, take that feeling and make the ball do that, 9 out of 10 times?
Getting pressure to it.
Yeah, now we're adding pressure to the situation. So now you've taken something that a person's only got, let's say, 3 pillars to work off. He's making sure that he's wide. He's done his little drills, and he goes, okay, well, I've got the feeling of being wide on the way down. Okay, cool. Well, I can be wide, and I can actually get the club into the back of the ball. I can feel like I'm hitting a nail into the back of the ball. Okay, good. I've got that feeling. All right. Well, now that you've done that, can you do this 7 out of 10 times?
Yeah.
And yes, well, hold on a second. Yes, I can. Okay. Well, now suddenly you're shooting 70 or 71 or 72 instead of shooting 80.
Yeah.
And that's how we kind of break it down for the guys,
Okay. You're right. I will preface I'm playing devil's advocate. Okay. But I have to ask this because, sometimes if you get a frequent lesson taker, I've taught golf since Moby Dick was a minnow, right? Where they come back and you're like, well, let's revisit that stuff. And it's like you sort of staying, would you say the pillars? I'm thinking of the skeleton of the human body. If it's strong and functional, there might be other little aesthetical things that need to be adjusted, or just little fine skill movements like you're talking about. But then they're like, but well, I've worked on this already. I mean, come on, really? Are we still on this stuff? Whereas that is kind of how it goes, right? With all your folks at the highest level, you're not chopping and changing and doing stuff all the time.
No, our plan stays very constant. And again, if at the highest level, which is where I mostly teach, at the highest level, if it breaks, we ask what breaks. So let's just use an example. Strike location goes off for somebody,
all right,
and they'll say, I have a toe tendency this week, Doug. Mid irons are definitely coming off the toe. Okay, well, the skill of the strike has now been lost. So what do we want to do? Well, we want to pull out the strike and we want to say, well, what do we need to do better with that strike? Okay, cool. Well, we need to hit it more towards the center. Do we have an exercise that we can pull it more towards the center? Yes, we do. So we put it into a block format, give them an exercise. And do they have a feeling that that block produced? Because if you don't have a feeling, you can't make it stand up under pressure. So then you'll pull the feeling from the block format and you'll say, okay, well, we pulled this feeling, and the feeling is that I'm swinging straighter down the line. For an example, I'm just pulling it. And that made me hit the middle of the club. Okay, cool. Well, now we can plug that back into the swing and say, okay, we're going to be feeling that you're swinging it straighter down the line, and we're going to test it again. Yeah. So if you can never stop pulling out the small little pieces, testing them, plugging them back into the system. So it's just like a puzzle or a circuit breaker that's broken. Pull it out, put it back in, and test it and go, okay, cool. Well, we've done it nicely.
I love the way you talk about it being like a puzzle. And here's a personal anecdote, and I have two observations, and I love your response out of them. I was working with a high-level golfer. I mean, this is a major champion, right? And
Yes.
to me, everything was fairly sound. It just wasn't there. And so I made an adjustment that was fine. It was like you move slightly closer to the ball, and you essentially feel like the toe is just trailing a touch. Let's say for argument's sake. And I was said, you're just plugging band-aids on the problem right now, because there was this belief that there was something deeper down that was wrong. So I'd want you to talk about that a little bit, because you have for a long time, you heard these folks that say, well, they're band-aid golf instructors, where at times I called it like running repairs on a race car. The car is great, but the tire has got a puncture in it, where you just got to deal with the tire, not the engine. You get where I'm going here.
100%. You can wake up on mornings and not have it 100%. I think being a good golfer is being able to play well with your B game most of the time. There's very few rounds or days, amateur or professional, where you always have your A game. The pros look like they've got their A game all the time, but believe me, they don't, because they'd be shooting 62 if they were playing their best every time they teed it. So you need to be able to be aware of where your B game is. What skill set do you have with that B game, and then be able to go put it into play, because it'll stand up under pressure and still play okay, if that makes any sense. So if you don't have the high fade that day, and you've been working on a high fade for 3 weeks, and you only have a mid-flight draw, but you're flushing it, well, best you go use it, And people call that a band-aid, but it's not. It's just how your body's feeling it for that day. And it may take 2 weeks to find its feeling again, and that's okay. It's okay for it to come and go.
I'm loving you saying that, because that fits with what my second observation was going to be, and I'm sure you see it. Maybe not with younger golfers that come and work at your academies, but you give a lesson to a random club golfer. We'll call him Joe, and Joe comes for the lesson, and you're like, "Hey, Joe, nice to see you. What you working on? Tell me about you. Physical ailments, blah 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 blah." Okay, what are the goals? I just want to be more consistent. And then somehow this consistent thing, they feel like, well, my golf swing is going to be exactly the same every time I hold a golf club. Yeah, go.
100%. Not a possibility. It's going to change all the time. So if you have the 3 pillars to always go back to, let's use those 3 pillars in your swing, or we've got a base point that you could start working on every single day. You could call that your warm-up. So proprioceptively, you're driving yourself in the same direction every morning with the same routine. So routine is key in this, because if you are waking up with a different key thought or a different attempt at something, your neural pathways will never develop where you are going to be consistently aware of what you're in control of. So
why don't you say that again? I think that might have gotten lost for folks. If you were watching on YouTube, I was writing a note and he went this way, and I stopped writing and I looked up and I was involved. Say that again.
So if your neural pathways are given a different instruction every day, they don't know where to start. That's the basis of it. So don't create new ones every day. At the end of every day, if you go into variable practice or like creative practice or stuff like that, once you've laid down the foundation of what your day should be, again, I call them pillars, and then skill sets, and then going into the rest of the practice with pressure and variability. You need to start with the same warm-up or the same principles and the same routine every day. Jack Nicklaus, I kind of got this from Nicklaus. He went back to Jack go out every year and read his stuff from square one, grip on
Started
the
with a
club.
grip, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, right from day one. And so I thought, well, we don't have to do that every season. We can do that pretty much every day. We can build in some pillars every day for the people to follow. And yeah, they've always got a baseline to go back to that'll never steer them too wrong.
What you're sharing there reminds me now of something that Lucas Glover once said to me. And Lucas fell out of the womb hitting it out the middle of the club. I mean, he's that sort of a guy, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so I asked him about what he does. And he said, tournament ends Sunday. Monday is decompress day. Tuesday on the range, I work on fundamental stuff. Is the ball position on? Is the alignment on? Is the posture there?
Yeah.
All that sort of stuff. Because, if I was playing in the wind last week, something may be a little off. So is that in a way, I guess, going to just double checking your pillars, like you say, and then you start to work from that? Because he goes Wednesday, you get into different stuff.
100%. And like I say, I'm happy for the guys to start with that for 5 minutes every day, because that consistency of saying I am going to be here and then working away from that space is absolutely crucial. Because if you wake up and you have a new pillar every day, or a new, random, you react to a feeling that when you're warming up after 10 or 15 balls and you go, oh, I don't like that feeling, I'm going to change this. Those neural pathways have no way of constructing something consistent every day. And if you want consistency, that's where you're going to find it.
Yeah,
and
well,
even then, there's still going to be consistency.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. That's where the consistency lies, and that consistent approach may, on different days, produce different things. That's the reality of it, huh?
That is, you may have, but it'll think about it like this: you might bump into the side of the highway, or the walls on the freeway, but you won't fly off the edge if you have that approach.
Yeah.
So I've kind of got an approach, because I don't want the guys to be perfect. I want them to just strive for excellence. So I want them to make some mistakes so that I can identify the difference between the good and the bad in their fields. But I never want them to go so far off that they can't start the next day in a good place, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. Okay, here's the $1 million question, because a lot of the folks listening, watching this, they might not be elite competitors, and they're just looking to find their best on Friday afternoon or Saturday morning, whenever they're going to play. Advise those folks, because they're not in the grind of practicing every day or every other day, but they're sort of golf involves to the course, hit a few shots if I'm lucky, then go and play, then a little social time afterwards. How are we going to get those folks to be more consistent in their approach?
So I think pick an avenue. It's like having a New Year's resolution. Pick one avenue that you want to do well. Okay. So even if you went to the putting green and you decided that you were going to, in your 10 putts that you had before you went and played, you were going to focus on hitting all 10 out the middle of the club. If you did that, you would honestly, in a month, you would be a better putter, because you had practiced for a month. Your 10 putts, hitting them out the middle of the club. And as a club golfer, I can assure you, if you hit the ball out the middle of the club, you are probably going to be a way better golfer. And if you're a little bit more advanced, you could pick up something and go, well, I'm going to stick to my practice swing feels for the whole month. And that feeling, if my professional at my club said to me, well, listen, I need to get a little bit more into out, or I need to get a little closer to the ball, and you make up that setup adjustment, and it's just that one thing that you do better, you'll be a better golfer. I think the guys struggle when they add multiple things to their thought process all at the same time, and then you get to the 6th tee and you're on your 7th kind of swing, and and you have no chance or no opportunity to ever improve. And then year on year, you just keep going round and round in the same place. So go and identify something with your club bro and say, hey, well, I want to work on these 3 things for the next year. And, then stick to those things, let him give them to you and go, okay, well, this is how we're going to get you better. And this is how you're going to do it every time you go to the golf course.
Okay. You're leading me the perfect segue into something I wanted to ask, because if golfers go to events and one of your clients is there, they're likely going to see the Doug Wood there behind. Always, I appreciate you. You're never like super invasive as a golf instructor. Like I see some guys that are touching and feeling and demonstrating and stuff, where you're just there and kind of talking. And then I see always like a self-discovery, sort of a wisdom out of your clients, where they look at you, they get the confirmation, and they go. Now, here's my observation. Everyone on the other side of the ropes, the fans now, they're like, man, I wish I knew what they were working on. And
Yeah.
my goodness, that stuff must be, wow, if only we knew, magical. But the truth of it is, it's
Yeah.
actually as simple as what you're saying, where you're like, man, for the next week, we're just
Yeah.
focusing on hitting this thing squarely. Is it so?
It is so. My job, I believe, or part of my job as an instructor, is to take the most complicated data you can possibly put together, science-wise, to prove that what we need to do is the following. And I'll say, okay, we're looking to, let's, for example, improve Eric's club face or Ash's swing speed. And we are going to give it to them in a sentence where I'll tell Ash, okay, Ash, I want you to paint the ball to hit the fade better.
Yeah.
And so instead of me pulling up, TrackMan numbers that are like angle of attack and, we're going into low points and, shaft leans. And so I don't give it to her like that. I just say, here's the golf ball. You've got a paintbrush on the end of your club face. I want you to paint it like this.
I love it, man.
Yeah, that's how we would simplify it. Or, for Eric, he would feel like he's swinging around his left leg a lot of the time, and it looks like so complicated, but it's not. It really is. Everything we do is there to give you a feeling that they can never forget. I think that's what I try and teach.
Okay, the Eric he's speaking of, folks, is Eric van Rooyen, PGA Tour winner. Off with he had surgery earlier this season, so he's been off for a few
months.
It shows you what a splash he made, because all the folks in the Golf Channel still thought he was going to get a pick on the international team. I'm like, the guy's freaking bedridden in his house. But anyway, a few years.
He didn't get operated on. Just to correct you,
sorry.
He's in deep rehab. Yeah, so a couple of months.
Yeah. So anyway, a few years ago, he's in Mexico at the World Golf Championships event. He's warming up and he's doing this move where on the way down, he's almost like straightening his legs on the downswing and almost popping off the ground.
We were teaching him to land,
Yeah, so the straight leg is sort of a leap. So I'm on the range waiting for my group. And so I say to our camera guys, hey, just train your stuff over here. This guy's up and coming. Watch what he's doing. Well, you should have seen the debate and heard it with the folks who were in the studio. So I'm to my producer, bring me in. Because he was like super in depth, but all to your point, that was one of those feelings where he was just learning how to land and sort of post up through contact.
Yeah. So the jump had nothing to do with the actual feeling we were trying to extract. It was just helping him feel like the ground, where he was getting absorbed into the ground. So when we lifted him off the ground and let him land, he could feel his body kind of sink a little.
Yeah.
And he says, oh, yeah, I can feel that I'm sinking into the ground. So I said, okay, we'll keep jumping. And that's how that exercise came about. So literally, yeah.
And he did, folks. And he did, which brings me to a point.
Yeah.
You answered that perfectly for me. Thank you very much. Where so many golfers, funny, it's the club golfers. It's not the elite folks, where the club golfers don't want to feel that conspicuous on the range in front of their buddies, where they've got to do some drill with a water floaty on their arm or little jump. They just don't want to do it. Help us, please help us.
Yeah, it's crazy how they get embarrassed, like to do something that would just create a simple feeling, It's like they're going, oh, I'm going to look like an absolute fool doing this. But
hitting crappy shots is not looking like a fool enough.
Yeah, I always say to the guys, I say, well, I can make you look stupid here and play well, or you can, look really good on the driving range and play poorly. Which one do you want? And so most of my clients tend to choose the other one.
And you're so right. I mean, you use the term neural pathways. Sometimes if something's been created, it needs a diversion point. It needs a catalyst to prompt things in the good direction.
Exactly. So you're right in my belief, in my wheelhouse here now. So I believe that if we can get somebody to feel it and not think it, they have a real opportunity to improve. Thinking something, that's great. You read it up the magazine or whatever you picked up for the week, and thinking it and knowing the feeling of what that's actually doing, and is that feeling correct? Once you've been given the go-ahead to say, yes, what you're feeling is correct by your instructor, that feeling will never go away. And I will find anything. I mean, I put elastics on the guys, elastic bands, rubber bands, anything to create feel. I'm not actually training movements. I'm training a feeling. I'm giving them something to go, oh, I can feel that. Let's move on from this. Yeah, I will create the most crazy things in the world for my top players to feel. And the thing is, they actually, after doing it 3 times, they'll wake up the next morning knowing what their feeling is. And I'll get them to keep repeating it so that they can keep it, but they'll never lose the feeling. Whereas thoughts disappear, like after 9 holes, oh geez, that swing thought is not working anymore.
Yeah. Hey,
Oh geez, that swing thought is not working anymore.
what you
Yeah.
say is so appropriate. Where you'll hear countless golfers, they're listening to this right now, where they're like, I'm thinking too much. They'll be hitting shots and there's pressure on them. They're like, oh my goodness, I'm thinking too much. I can't do it. And then they sort of step away, maybe just calm the white noise in the head, and then they get back to that feel. So I want you to talk about the accessing of the feel, because they get it, but sometimes environmentally there are challenges that make it hard to sort of find the feel, if you will, when they're back at the course.
Yeah, so with me, I like to find the background of the player. So some might have done ice hockey, some might have done basketball, some might have done tennis, whatever it may be.
Mhm.
And I will find a way to make them move better within stuff that they've already trained.
They know, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I will always find a way to something that they know. It could be throwing a dart against the dartboard. It could be, yeah, if we were talking about grip pressure, I will find a way that they can understand. I mean, I've got a couple of surgeons that I teach, and we discuss, how they hold the knife and how they move. And I said, well, when you've got the golf club, think about this as being a big knife, and you've got to cut the ball through the golf ball doing
Yeah.
X. And I mean, the improvement is, you can't believe how quickly they can do that, just because they have that feeling. That the neural pathway in their brain goes, well, I know what to do when I've got a knife in my hand, and now I've just extended it, and they'll move it in a certain direction. And I mean, it's almost instant. Yeah.
That, you know what? That is so appropriate. I mean, I've used images like 10-pin bowling before for
Yeah.
topspin forehand and tennis. Back in the day, I gave Tim Henman tennis lessons, and I put a ball in the tee and put a 7-iron in his right hand. I'm like, hit me a topspin forehand. Lo and behold, he could, and that's how he learned to swing the golf club. Um, but I guess here's the observation, and I want your commentary, where all of these athletic moves, like if you give anyone a bat and you like hit the ball, they can probably do it. Throw the thing there, they'll do it. Toss the ball, whatever. But then a lot of golfers, and this is for the beginners here, they hold the club kind of weird. They don't hold it like they would any other racket. And then they're like, well, I got to hit the ball down here. And the next thing, it becomes a real choppy action. So what I'm saying to talk about your clarity of thought and your feels and stuff, they think hit the ball as opposed to deliver the golf club sort of underneath and through the base of the arc. So please go there, because I feel like sometimes the hit the ball thing, or I've got to strike it because then you aren't playing well and now I've just got to strike this. Then they're not clear with that nail through the back of the ball like you talked about earlier.
Yeah, I mean, that I actually picked up from a book from, I think it was Adam Young. He wrote about the nail in the ball, but we had been doing that in the 80s already, where we'd be teaching the guys to kind of hit through the back of the ball.
Yeah.
And the 90s, we were doing funny things like that. But yeah, to speak to it, I will find the way, especially like if it's choppy, then I'll say, okay, well, we know it's too vertical. We need something that goes around. Then I'll ask them, what could they do? If I told them to swing around, what would they look like if they swung around? And immediately it won't become choppy.
Yeah.
You can explain. So often I'll use the very bad one to say, okay, I want you to hold on to that feeling, the bad feeling, and I want you to hold on to this new feeling. There's the good feeling. And I'll actually make them practice do one really bad, one really good, one really bad, one really good. And you'll be surprised within five to 10 balls, they'll know the difference between the good feeling and the bad feeling. It's just about identifying it.
Well, that'll help to recalibrate too. And I'll let this sort of be the parting shot so you can comment. Thanks for your time. Where, you recommend an adjustment that's different to someone, to what they've been doing. And for all you golfers out there, like your process you to do X, and then you're like, this feels weird. This doesn't feel right, because it's just out of the ordinary. So comment to that, please, because that like this feels weird thing, it should feel weird for a while because it's different to what you've been doing, right?
Yeah, I want them to know that it feels different, but I want them to feel like it's strong.
Okay, right.
So if I give them a movement that is, let's say, suitable to their swing style, so to speak, because I mean, I'm not really teaching them any beginners, but even if I was teaching beginners, it would be, well, does this feel strong? Does the club feel like it's in a strong position? My arms feel like they're in a strong position, or my legs, or whatever it is. Do they feel like that feels good? It feels different, but it feels good.
Yeah.
It's strange how the human brain likes the feeling of strength or control. So when it feels like it's in control of the object or the body part, the internal or the external focus, it has a tendency to go towards it. So my question to them will always be, I'm giving this to you. I want you to feel this. Does it feel strong, or does this one feel stronger? So I'll find out which one that I'll often test which one is stronger or weaker for them, so to speak.
All right.
Yeah. And then I'll build their swing on that. So if I gave you a club and I just made you swing back with your left arm, where your left arm swung the club back, let's just say you were a mid-handicap golfer, not a complete beginner, where your left arm swung the golf club back, it would use its strongest position to hold the golf club.
Stuff would organize
it.
Yeah, things would get organized.
Yeah, it'll organize itself and go, okay, cool. Well, I need to be this high or this low if we were talking about height and depth. And it'll organize itself almost instantaneously. And then if you did that and then just, okay, well, put your right hand in there, and that'll be your backswing's left arm's strongest position. It won't find its weakest position. So the guys that are teaching, bow your wrist and lift the club and whatever, not that that's bad, if it's suited to you. If you made them do that with just one arm, they would feel terrible.
Yeah, exactly.
If it wasn't natural to them, they would feel awful. Yes. So yeah,
you're preaching. Yeah, you're preaching, brother. Because, and this, I think, would be the perfect wrap up for everything you've said, because you said turning thoughts and ideas into fields that can stand the test of pressure.
Yeah,
that's the thing. Into your place there, because we live in an era now where, again, it's easy to find access to golf swings on social media. Heck, if you switch on my Instagram, I've got footage of golfers from every week out there for folks who are interested. But then they're trying to bow the wrist like a Brooks or a DJ or someone, or Victor Hovland. That's what Victor Hovland does. It's not what you can do under pressure.
100%. Those things, if you put those people in that position, they would probably take their club with one arm into that position.
Yes.
So it's not something that they're consciously making an effort to do. That is something that their body says, hold on, I like this. I have a youngster, Carl McClatchy, does the same thing. Bows it out completely up on the top plane. He's only about 5 foot. He's 4, and he literally bows it out high up, and he's an unbelievable golfer, but it is what he does. When I tell him to swing back with one hand, he does that. Yeah. So go to your strongest points.
Yeah, boy. Well, look, I've bounced around all over the place because I'm listening to you like a fan and not necessarily an interviewer. But thanks anyway. I mean, it's great stuff, Doug. For the people in South Africa, they know where to find you. For the folks abroad, if they want to reach out, ask questions, is there a website, social media?
Just grab us at Want to Be a Champion on Instagram. You've got a website, same thing. But we're pretty active on Instagram, following the people and stuff and answering. So anything you need out there, just give us a shout.
Yeah,
and hope to see everybody in the fairways.
There's a person here you just heard the phone was reaching out now. Maybe for you, no, maybe not. Hey, Doug, listen, as a South African, deep down, I'm so happy that the folks in South Africa have access to you. I feel like you're the reason why so many good young players are coming out so well prepared. Keep up the great work, and I look forward to seeing you very soon, man.
Thanks, mate, and thanks for having me on, and I hope I didn't burn everybody's ears off.
No, okay. There's 2 types of burn. There's the bad for you burn, and then there's the burn where you singe edges and it gets all nice and tasty. That's what you just did.
Thanks, Blakey. Appreciate it.